So one of the topics that I came here to speak about was the confusion about nutrition and how it is really the most complicated, complex science when you compare it to other sciences. And the reason for this is multivariable. There are a lot of different reasons why it's so confusing. There's a lot of different opinions, there's a lot of different research, it's hard to study, all of that. So the best way to approach it is, to look for resources that are objective. You have to look at all of the resources and take all the information in and then make decisions based on that. Of course, some intuition comes into play here, but the overall preponderance of data that we have shows that a whole food plant-based diet is optimal for health and that you can get all of your nutrients, say for vitamin B12, from eating a whole food plant-based diet. And there's so many different ways to eat a plant-based diet that makes it accessible for everyone. So in terms of ease of use, everyone could find a way to incorporate more whole plant foods into their diet. And that just means crowding out the processed foods, the animal products, until you transition yourself to eating an exclusively whole food plant-based diet. And that is where you're gonna get all of your phytonutrients and your fiber and all of the components that protect you against disease and give you the best nutritional bang for your caloric buck. And likewise, it will also help you avoid the health damaging compounds, the things that we know promote disease, like saturated fat and cholesterol and heme iron and new-5-GC and L-carnitine that converts into TMAO, and all of those compounds that we see that promote the disease process, inflammation and oxidation and all of that. So that's the wonderful benefit of eating a whole food plant-based diet. You could go raw and you could eat a lot. I love raw foods. I think raw foods are really important because you get a lot of nutrients in raw foods that when you start cooking or processing them, you lose some of those nutrients. So I recommend consuming at least half your calories from raw foods, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, and if you can sprout or get sprouted grains and legumes, those are wonderful, and nuts and seeds and all of that. But there's also some benefits to including some cooked foods in your diet. So for instance, if you cook whole grains are wonderful ways to substantiate a diet and help with satiety, help you live longer and better. There's wonderful nutrients and health profiles associated with whole grains. But also, certain nutrients are enhanced when they're cooked. For instance, the phytochemicals like lycopene and lutein, which are found in tomatoes. So when you cook tomatoes and make it into a beautiful sauce, in the Mediterranean diet, which I talk about in the vegetarian diet, they have this sofrito, and they would cook it all day, and there was a lot of effort put into this beautiful, delicious sauce. And those phytochemicals are enhanced and actually absorb better and help reduce the risk of prostate cancer and help improve eye health, just that one nutrient alone from being cooked. So there are benefits to eating raw food and there's benefits to eating cooked food. It's just a way of making it accessible for everyone, what works for you, and trying to incorporate both of those types of foods into your diet. One of the biggest myths is that there's nothing to eat on a plant-based diet and that you just sit there and munch on carrots and celery all day like a rabbit. But it's so not true. And I've seen myself and other people, it's like rediscovering food, because now you get to think outside the box and you get to explore fresh herbs and dried spices, and you can make all sorts of things. You can make something very bland turn into all sorts of different flavors, and you can mimic the profiles of all these different wonderful cultural varieties. You could visit every country in the world with different flavor combinations, and it's really exciting. And that's one of my favorite reasons, culinarily speaking, for a plant-based diet, is that it makes you think outside of the steak in the middle of the plate, the meat in the middle of the plate that you just throw on, salt and pepper, and it was very boring. If you really kind of start eating a plant-based diet, you see how much more variety of flavor, of textures, of just everything you could do. You can make it much more exciting when you think beyond that standard American plate that we were raised with. So yeah, I love herbs and spices. I always consider myself having a black thumb because I'm not very good in the garden, but I have been able successfully to grow some herbs, and fresh herbs make everything taste better. Sometimes I take a bunch of fresh herbs and I just chop them all up, or I wash them, and then right before I eat them, I chop them all up, and then I add them to salads. You could top them on soups, you could put them anywhere, and it gives you like that fresh sensation. Everything tastes fresh and delicious when you add fresh herbs. But you can cook them, you could do everything with them, and it's really fun to experiment with.